Welcome back to Primetime Local News, and I'm joined once again by Greg Buchanan, but also Brett Holden joins us from the newsroom for a little bit of trade deadline talk, as that just finished a couple of hours ago. Now we have a few new looks for some teams that I don't think there's any real major splashes in terms of a generational player or a star that changes the fortunes of a team, but there are a couple of moves that should have an impact, and one of the ones that Canadian fans will obviously be interested in is Matt Hendricks from Minnesota, a guy that the Oilers fans know well. He's reacquired by the Jets for a 7th-round pick. What does that do for the Jets, Brett?
Right, exactly. Not a move exactly that you're going to be seeing on the front page of the paper. But I think what Hendricks brings is that leadership kind of mentality for that Winnipeg Jets team, a team that has a very young core and guys like Laine, Scheifele, Morrissey, Hallebuck, and being able, he was dressed for warm-ups when he played in Edmonton just because of that leadership kind of mentality that he brings. Obviously, we're talking too much into Matt Hendricks' trade, but that is something that he brings and something I want.
You know what? There's something to be said about that, because you come into the playoffs and you have war, and really the playoffs are a war. You need soldiers, and he's not just a soldier; he's a bit of a leader of soldiers. So if you bring him in and he's a bottom 6 and doesn't get a lot of ice, you bring him in maybe a little bit of penalty kill, because he did a little bit of that in Edmonton. You know, maybe that's something that they need, because you know what, if the Jets are going to the playoffs, they're going to go deep, and it's going to get nasty at times.
And it's a reacquire too. Yep. He's played there as well.
For sure. And another guy that I'm sure will try to help the war part of it is D-man Nathan Beaulieu. Did I pronounce that correctly? Beaulieu.
Yeah,
I knew I was mispronouncing that. So they only gave up a 6th-round pick for him as well to try to shore up their back line. Does that do enough for them, considering they were really going hard after Mark Stone, and as we'll talk about later, didn't get to him?
Right. I think for Beaulieu, I think that's just a depth kind of third pairing kind of guy, a guy who's been third pairing not only in Buffalo but also in Montreal, so he's used to that kind of market.
And you saw a lot of depth moves today. Toronto makes a depth move. You know, Calgary to a certain extent does that too. So I think teams are shoring up for the playoffs, making sure that you make sure you don't come short in the back end, making sure you have enough depth up front too. So you see little trades. Of course, you saw some big ones, but some of those depth trades are looking down the road.
And speaking of, is what we were alluding to earlier, Brandstrom, Lindbergh, and a 2nd-round pick for Mark Stone is the deal. So he's off to play in Vegas. What does that do for that team, which still could make a push for first in their division?
I think Mark Stone is the kind of guy we were talking about, where he can produce not only offensively but defensively as well, whether that be just being on your guy all the time, or whether that be getting into a star's face, right? That's not necessarily a hey, he's getting secondary, primary assists. That's a guy who's doing his job and doing it right. You
know what? Mark Stone plays the game right, and he plays the game right in both ends. And more than anything, he's a guy too that you can put right in the middle between Carlson and Marchessault there in Vegas, because right now Smith is with those two, and Smith has been colder than cold. I think he's got 1 goal in 2019, so they got to do something to get Smitty going. So they drop him into the top 3, and then you have Pacioretty there too. Like, they're deep up front. And the thing is, everybody was a wild card last year. Nothing's a wild card this year with Vegas.
Now we only have a little bit of time here, so we got to go rapid fire on a couple of others. So really quick, Ryan Hartman and a pick from Nashville to Philadelphia for Wayne Simmons. Does that make a big difference for Predators?
Yeah, it does, because Nashville is a team that's going to go deep, and Simmons is a warrior, and he's got a guy that can get you points, but he can also be physical and be in the face kind of guy. That's what Nashville needs.
And he fits in that organization well too, that kind of game.
Really quickly too, Oscar Fantenberg goes from LA to Calgary. That's my team. Do you think he plays any kind of role for them in the playoffs?
Calgary did nothing for the deadline today. They did nothing to get better at all.
Do you think they had to get better?
Absolutely. When it comes to playoff time, they don't. I mean, Johnny Gaudreau hasn't been there before. Their leaders haven't really been there yet, and if they could have brought in somebody, that would have been huge.
Calgary just has to go to the playoffs, get some games, and get experience in the playoffs. I don't think you want to give up your future for right now.
I also don't want to give up that future as a Flames fan. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll have more on Primetime Local News.